At the Church Ambassador Network, it is our heart to renew our minds in the way we view government. God calls us to renew our minds in everything that we have and that we do and that we see and that we know. And government is just one of those parts of our lives. And our hope is that every believer in Iowa, across the United States, and the world would understand what God has to say about government. Too often in our own nation, we often rely on political parties, news media, to form our opinions on government, but also even rely on the government to teach us what government is, who's it responsible for. But seldom do we understand how much the Bible actually says about government. So I'm thinking here as November 6, 2018 quickly approaches, and Americans go through another election, wouldn't it be helpful if we at least understood what God's Word has to say about government? And I often think if there was three things for everyone in the church to understand, just three things that would lay the foundation to renewing the mind about government, this is what I believe it would be. And it comes from Romans chapter 13 and also 1 Peter chapter 2. One, government was instituted by God. That's right, it's His. It's not a worldly institution, it's an institution of God's. And number two, He created it with a purpose. And its purpose is to punish evil and reward those who do good. Which is very important for the church to understand, because if government's job is to punish evil and reward good, how do you determine good and evil without God? It's impossible. People are forced to look within themselves to form their own moral standard. And what do we know about people, myself included? Many ways seem right to a person, but in the end it leads to death, it says in the book of Proverbs. The heart is deceptive above all things, Jeremiah writes. So without God, without any looking to Him, our government is forced to look within itself to answer these difficult questions. And what we find throughout history is man will often reward what God calls evil and punish those who do good. And the last one, this one's so crucial as we head into this election. Those who serve in government, Romans 13, boldly says are servants of the Lord's. They're ministers of God. Does that mean on election day we're voting for far more than a governor, a congressman, a state legislator? We are voting for a servant of the Lord who's been called to serve in His institution of government with the purpose to punish what He calls evil and reward good. And when government does its job God's way, as He intended and designed it, it is a blessing to all of its people. So I encourage all of us, let's take off our American hats this election season and let's dive into our Bible and see, what does God have to say about government?